Taking photos of moving subjects can be tricky, but especially when your subject is an aircraft with a possible top speed of up to 1,900 kilometers per hour. So keep watching for a bunch of tips that will help you get better photos of very fast moving subjects. Welcome to the Photo Genius channel. Hi, Paul here from Photo Genius. Welcome to my channel where I like to share camera and photography tips designed to help you take better photos with your digital camera. So this weekend here in Brisbane, it's the start of the Brisbane Festival. That's an annual celebration of arts and culture, and it commences with an event called River Fire. The highlight of that is a huge firework display along the Brisbane River, as well as flyovers from the Royal Australian Air Force. And it was exactly that inspired me to make this week's video. Now, I'm certainly no expert on aviation or planes, but for me, one of the highlights of the Brisbane Festival is the flyovers, which this year includes a Globemaster 3, a Spartan and 2 Growlers. And yes, I had to Google that information. So in this video, I'm going to share some tips on how to set your camera up to help you get some amazing photos when the subject is moving at speed. So ideally you're going to need a DSLR or mirrorless type camera like this one with manual functions, plus a telephoto lens. Something around about the 200 to 300mm range should do fine, but of course a longer lens may be needed depending on how far away the subject is. So let's now run through the camera settings, and we're going to begin with my recommended camera mode. So my recommendation is shutter priority. Now this is S on the mode dial for most cameras, but if you're using a Canon camera, look for TV. This is also shutter priority, with the TV standing for time value. So the advantage of using shutter priority is that you can set the shutter speed to whatever you wish, and the camera looks after the aperture. Here you can see as I increase the shutter speed, the camera is adjusting the aperture to compensate. But once we get into the really fast shutter speeds, depending on how much light is available, the aperture may begin to flash. This indicates the aperture in the lens is at its limit. So to fix this and avoid underexposure, I'm going to turn on Auto ISO. Now I can continue to increase the shutter speed with the camera adjusting the ISO if needed. So you can replicate these settings for just about any camera. You may need to experiment with your shutter speed, but anything above 1/2000th of a second should work just fine. Okay, so now let's talk about focusing. Now when shooting moving subjects, be that sports, wildlife, or of course in this case planes, you're going to want to use continuous autofocus, simply because the distance between the camera and the subject is constantly changing. If you're using a Canon camera, change the focus mode from one shot to servo. On other cameras this may be called autofocus continuous, or AFC for short. On some cameras there may be a switch on the camera itself for easier selection. Now the next step is being able to control where the camera focuses. For fast moving subjects it's going to be easier to track a subject when in the middle of the frame, so let's start there. Locate your camera's focus area settings. Now 1-point autofocus is my default setting, but it can be difficult to track a moving subject using a single autofocus point. So expanded AF area may be a better choice and is very popular with bird photographers. Now your camera may even have subject tracking, but you will need to check your camera manual for more info. But let me know in the comments if you would like to see a video that goes into more detail on focus area modes and subject tracking. Now for fast moving subjects, the next thing I recommend doing is turning on the camera's continuous shooting mode, also sometimes called the burst mode. So when you hold down the shutter button to take a picture, the camera will take photos until you release the button. The number of images per second your camera can take will depend on factors such as whether you're shooting JPEG or RAW images and how fast the memory card is. Now because you're going to be using such a fast shutter speed and therefore the camera has less time to capture and record light, it's very likely the camera will increase the ISO to compensate. Now if the light is good, the camera will not need to increase the ISO too much. However, with the river fire event here in Brisbane, the flyovers are often scheduled to start in the afternoon, a bit close to sunset. So therefore the ISO is likely to be higher, depending of course on how fast the shutter speed is. With this image, the shutter speed was very fast at 1/3200th of a second. The aperture was f5 and the ISO is at 2500 because this was taken towards the end of the day. Now this does result in some digital noise, which you can see if we zoom in. But take a look at this. This is after using denoise in Lightroom. A pretty good result. Okay, so once you have everything set up, my final tip is to take photos using the viewfinder rather than the screen. And that's simply because your reaction time is likely to be quicker. Now, once you have a plane in your sights, press and hold the shutter button halfway down to activate autofocus and then simply track your subject. And don't forget to hold the shutter button down so the camera takes lots of images and therefore increases your chances of getting the perfect shot. And I would love to see them. So if you're sharing your images on Instagram, please remember to tag Photogenius so I can find them. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video and you picked up some tips. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you would like to see more photography tips and tutorials from me. And that's about it. Thanks again for watching. See you next time. See ya. Bye.